Back at the station, Donnell and Marcus went to the library, their minds buzzing with possibilities. Donnell pulled out the photograph he had found earlier, spreading it out on the table. "We need to identify these people," he said, pointing to the men in the picture. Marcus leaned closer, examining the faces. "If we can find out who they are, it might lead us to more answers about your father." They spent hours searching through old records, newspaper articles, and public databases. The more they dug, the more they uncovered about the organization his father had been part of. Donnell felt a growing sense of urgency. As the sun began to set, they finally made a breakthrough. One name in particular stood out: Mikey Harper, a known associate of Isaac's and a key player in the organization. His face matched one in the photograph. "This is it," Donnell exclaimed, his excitement palpable. "If we can find him, he might have the answers we need." "Let's see what we can dig up on him," Marcus replied, his fingers flying across the keyboard. After a few more searches, they discovered that Mikey had a reputation for being elusive. He was rumored to be living in a nearby city, but no one had seen him in months. "We need to find out where he is," Donnell said, determination setting in. "He could help us understand what happened to my father." The next day, Donnell and Marcus decided to venture out of the station. They borrowed a police cruiser, hoping to stay under the radar while searching for Mikey. As they drove through the city, Donnell felt a mix of hope and fear. "Where do we even start?" Marcus asked, scanning the streets. "I remember hearing whispers about a bar he used to frequent," Donnell said, recalling snippets from the articles. "It was called the Rusty Nail. Let's check there." They pulled up to the bar, a dimly lit establishment tucked away on a quiet street. The sound of laughter and music spilled out as they stepped inside. Donnell scanned the room, looking for any sign of Mikey. They approached the bar, and Donnell leaned closer to the bartender. "We're looking for Mikey Harper. Do you know where we can find him?" The bartender hesitated, glancing around nervously. "Mikey's been in and out, but he hasn't been around lately. You might want to check with some of the regulars." "Thanks," Donnell said, trying to keep his voice steady. He turned to Marcus, frustration creeping in. "We need to find someone who knows him." They started talking to patrons, but each inquiry was met with blank stares or nervous laughs. It seemed no one wanted to get involved. Just as they were about to give up, a man with a scruffy beard approached them. "You looking for Mikey?" he asked, eyeing them warily. "Yes, do you know where he is?" Donnell asked, hope igniting again. The man glanced around before leaning closer. "I heard he was last seen over at the old warehouse by the docks. But be careful. There are some dangerous folks hanging around there." "Thanks," Donnell said, adrenaline surging. They had a lead. As they drove to the docks, Donnell's heart raced. The sun was beginning to set, casting a dark shadow over the water. The old warehouse loomed ahead, its broken windows and rusted metal giving it an ominous appearance. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked, glancing at Donnell with concern. Donnell nodded, resolute. "This could be our best chance to find out the truth." They parked a safe distance away and approached the warehouse cautiously. The air was thick with tension, and Donnell could hear distant sounds of machinery and muffled voices coming from inside. "Stay close," Marcus whispered as they slipped through the broken door. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, shadows dancing across the walls. They crept deeper into the building, following the sounds of conversation. Suddenly, Donnell spotted a familiar figure leaning against a pillar, Mikey Harper. He looked older than in the photograph, with weary eyes and a nervous demeanor. "Donnell!" Marcus hissed. "We should turn back." But Donnell was already moving forward, his heart pounding. "Mikey," he called out. Mikey turned, his eyes widening in surprise. "Who are you? What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you about my father," Donnell said urgently. "It's about Isaac Johnson." Mikey stiffened, glancing around nervously. "You shouldn't be here. It's not safe." "Please," Donnell pressed. "I need to know the truth about what happened to him." Mikey hesitated, his expression conflicted. "Fine. But we need to talk somewhere private. Mikey led them to a secluded area in the warehouse, away from prying eyes. Donnell could see the tension in Mikey's body as he looked around, ensuring they were alone. "What do you want to know?" Mikey asked, crossing his arms defensively. "Everything," Donnell replied, his voice steady. "Why did my father leave? What was he involved in?" Mikey sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Your father was caught up in something much bigger than he anticipated. The organization we were part of was ruthless. They had their hands in everything: money, power, influence. When Isaac tried to back out, they didn't let him go easily." Donnell's heart sank. "So he was in danger because he wanted to protect me?" "Exactly," Mikey said, his voice lowering. "But there's more. There were people who didn't want Isaac to speak out. They wanted to silence him, and they would do anything to keep their secrets hidden." "What happened to him?" Donnell pressed, desperate for answers. Mikey glanced around again, paranoia etched on his face. "I don't know for sure. One day, he just disappeared. The last I heard, he was trying to gather evidence against the organization. He thought he could expose them, but it didn't end well." Donnell felt a wave of anger wash over him. "This isn't fair. I just want to know the truth." Mikey's eyes softened. "I get it, kid. But you need to understand, you're in danger now. They're watching, and they won't stop until they silence anyone who gets too close." "Then we need to act fast," Donnell said, determination surging through him. "How can I find the evidence my father left behind?" "I might know a place," Mikey replied cautiously. "But it's risky. You have to promise me you'll be careful." Donnell nodded. "I promise." Mikey pulled out a small notebook from his pocket, scribbling down an address. "This is where Isaac used to meet some of his contacts. If he left anything behind, it might be there." "Thank you," Donnell said, feeling a mix of gratitude and urgency. "I need to go there right away." "Wait," Mikey said, concern flashing in his eyes. "You can't go alone. I'll help you, but we have to be cautious. They'll be looking for you." Donnell nodded, grateful for Mikey's willingness to assist. "Let's move quickly, then. We need to get there before anyone else does." As they made their way out of the warehouse, Marcus and Mikey exchanged wary glances, a shared understanding forming between them. The air outside felt charged, a palpable tension hanging in the evening sky. They climbed into the cruiser, Donnell gripping the address tightly in his hand. "Where exactly are we headed?" Marcus asked, glancing at the paper. "A storage unit on the outskirts of town," Donnell replied. "It might be where my father kept important documents or evidence he gathered." "Let's hope we find something useful," Marcus said, determination in his voice. The drive was filled with a heavy silence, each of them lost in their thoughts. Donnell's mind raced with questions about his father, the organization, and what awaited them at the storage unit. When they arrived, the setting sun cast long shadows over the rows of storage units. Donnell felt a knot of anxiety twist in his stomach. "This is it," he said, stepping out of the car. Mikey led the way, navigating through the maze of units until they reached the one he believed Isaac had used. He pulled out a key from his pocket, his hands trembling slightly. "I hope this still works," he muttered, inserting it into the lock. With a soft click, the door swung open, revealing a dimly lit space cluttered with boxes and old furniture. Dust motes danced in the air, and the musty smell of age filled their nostrils. "Start looking through the boxes," Donnell urged, trying to suppress his excitement. "We have to find something, anything." They began sifting through the clutter, pulling out old files, photographs, and miscellaneous items. Time felt like it slipped away as they searched, the tension building with each passing moment. "Over here!" Marcus called, holding up a box labeled Important Documents. Donnell rushed over, heart pounding. They opened it together, revealing a collection of papers, including bank statements and contracts. Donnell's hand shook as he rifled through them, searching for anything that could shed light on his father's past. "Wait, what's this?" Marcus said, pulling out a folder marked with a red stamp that read Confidential. Donnell's breath hitched. Open it. Inside, they found detailed notes, names of people involved in the organization, and accounts of illicit dealings. Donnell felt a surge of anger and betrayal. This was the truth he had been searching for. "This is huge," Mikey said, eyes wide as he scanned the documents. "With this evidence, you could take them down." "But they'll come after us," Donnell replied, his voice tense. "We have to be smart about this." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed outside the unit, and Donnell's heart dropped. "Someone's here," he hissed. "Quick! Hide!" Mikey urged, and they scrambled behind a stack of boxes, holding their breaths as the door creaked open. The door swung wide, revealing two men in dark clothing. Donnell recognized one as the man who had chased them in the warehouse. Panic surged through him. "They can't find us here," Marcus whispered urgently. The men began searching through the unit, their voices low but intense. "I know they were here. They can't get away with this," one of them said. Donnell felt his heart pounding in his ears. They had to remain silent. If they were discovered, everything would be over. "They must have found something," the other man growled, rifling through a box and tossing items aside. "We need to find them before they expose us." Donnell glanced at Marcus and Mikey, their faces tight with fear. The tension in the air was suffocating as the men continued to rummage through the unit. "Check under the tarp," one man ordered, and Donnell held his breath, praying they wouldn't look too closely. As the men moved closer, Donnell could hear their footsteps thudding against the floor, their impatience palpable. Just then, one of them leaned against the boxes, sending a few tumbling to the ground with a loud crash. "Damn it," the man cursed. "They could be anywhere. We need to regroup and search the entire area." "Let's go," the other man said, frustration evident in his voice. "We can't let them slip through our fingers." Donnell felt a wave of relief wash over him as they exited the unit, the door shutting behind them. They waited in silence for what felt like an eternity before finally emerging from their hiding spot. "That was too close," Marcus said, his voice shaky. Donnell nodded, adrenaline still coursing through him. "We need to get these documents out of here and find a way to protect ourselves." Mikey took a deep breath. "We should head back to the station. It's the safest place for now." They gathered the important documents, carefully placing them back in the folder. Donnell's mind raced with plans. He couldn't let this opportunity slip away. Back at the station, Donnell felt a sense of urgency as they quickly reviewed the documents. The weight of the evidence felt significant, and the possibility of exposing the organization loomed large. "We need to contact someone who can help us with this," Donnell said, glancing at Marcus and Mikey. "We can't just go public without a plan." "I know a detective who can handle this," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "She's been investigating the organization for years. If we can get her to see this evidence, she might help us." Donnell nodded, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. "Let's do it." Marcus made the call, his voice steady as he explained the situation. After a tense conversation, he hung up and turned to Donnell. "She'll meet us in an hour. We need to prepare." Donnell felt a surge of determination. "Let's make sure everything is in order. We can't afford to let anything slip through the cracks." As they gathered their thoughts and organized the documents, the weight of their mission settled heavily on Donnell's shoulders. He knew they were risking everything to uncover the truth, but he couldn't turn back now. When the detective arrived, she exuded confidence, her sharp gaze scanning the room. "I'm Detective Ramirez," she introduced herself, extending a hand. "Donnell," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I understand you have information regarding the organization that's been causing trouble in this town," she said, her tone serious. Donnell nodded, leading her to the table where they had laid out the documents. "We found these at a storage unit linked to my father. He was involved with them, and I believe he was trying to expose their activities before he disappeared." Detective Ramirez examined the papers closely, her expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "This is significant," she said, looking up at Donnell. "If this information is accurate, it could lead to major arrests." "Exactly," Marcus added. "But we're worried about our safety. They know we're looking into this." I understand, she replied, her tone calming. We'll take precautions. I'll arrange for protection while we investigate further. But I need you to be careful. The organization won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets in their way. Donnell felt a mix of relief and fear. What do we do next? First, we need to verify the information you've gathered, Detective Ramirez said, pulling out her phone. I'll have my team run background checks on the names and events mentioned in these documents. Meanwhile, I want you three to stay low. Avoid any unnecessary risks. Donnell nodded, knowing how crucial this moment was. Thank you for your help. We just want to find out what happened to my father. Over the next few days, Donnell, Marcus, and Mikey stayed close to the station, working with Detective Ramirez and her team. They dove deep into the evidence, piecing together the threads of Isaac's past. As they gathered more information, they learned about the organization's structure and the powerful individuals behind it. Donnell felt a mix of anger and determination as he began to understand the magnitude of what his father had been up against. Detective Ramirez kept them updated, sharing the progress of her investigations. We're making headway, she said one evening, her tone serious. But we need to be cautious. There are whispers that they know someone's been snooping around. Donnell felt a chill run down his spine. What do we do if they come after us? We'll have protective measures in place, Ramirez assured him. But you need to stay vigilant. If you see anything suspicious, report it immediately. As the days turned into a week, Donnell felt a growing sense of unease. The closer they got to uncovering the truth, the more it seemed like danger was lurking around every corner. One evening, as they were reviewing documents in the station's conference room, Donnell noticed a shift in the atmosphere. The hum of the fluorescent light seemed louder, and a sense of tension hung in the air. Detective Ramirez had just walked in, her expression serious. Listen up, she said, her voice low but urgent. We have intel that the organization is planning to retaliate. They know we're onto them. Donnell's heart sank. What does that mean for us? It means we need to be ready, Ramirez replied. I'm increasing security around you three, but I need you to be on high alert. If they come after you, they won't hesitate. Is there a specific target? Marcus asked, anxiety creeping into his voice. Not yet, but we suspect they might come for you at home or while you're out in public, she said. I want you to stay together as much as possible. Mikey swallowed hard. What do we do if they find us? We fight back, Donnell said, his resolve strengthening. We can't let fear control us. We have to finish what my father started. Detective Ramirez nodded, her respect evident. That's the spirit. But remember, we need to be smart. We'll set up a safe house where you can lay low while we finalize our plan. The next day, they moved to a safe house on the outskirts of town, a small, unassuming cabin hidden by thick trees. Donnell felt a mix of relief and tension as they settled in. This place feels isolated, Marcus said, glancing around. I hope it's enough to keep us safe. It's only temporary, Donnell replied. We'll stay here until we have a plan to expose the organization. As the days passed, they kept a low profile, communicating with Detective Ramirez regularly. She informed them that her team was gathering enough evidence to take down key members of the organization. But despite the safety of the cabin, Donnell couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. They spent their time reviewing documents, piecing together a timeline of events leading to his father's disappearance. One evening, as they were discussing their next steps, Donnell's phone buzzed. It was a message from Detective Ramirez, we need to talk. Urgent. His heart raced. I need to meet her, he said, glancing at Marcus and Mikey. Be careful, Marcus warned. If they're onto us, it might not be safe to go out alone. I'll be fine, Donnell insisted, trying to sound confident. I won't be gone long. Donnell drove to a nearby diner where they had agreed to meet. The familiar neon lights felt oddly comforting, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. When he entered, he spotted Detective Ramirez at a booth in the corner. She looked up, her expression grave. Donnell, thank you for coming. We have serious developments. What's going on? He asked, sliding into the seat across from her. We've identified several key players in the organization. They're planning a meeting tonight at an abandoned factory. This could be our chance to catch them in the act, she explained. Donnell's pulse quickened. And what about us? I want you to stay in the safe house, but if you're willing, I need you and your friends to help me set up surveillance. We'll need eyes on the ground, she said firmly. Donnell hesitated, the weight of the decision heavy. What if something goes wrong? If we can gather enough evidence tonight, we can bring them down for good, she replied. But I can't do it without you. After a moment of thought, Donnell nodded. Okay. We'll help.